This presentation actually will try to present you how we attempted to respond to the needs that were identified in the literature and then in the training gap analysis. Hopefully we managed to respond to most of these issues, but you are here and it's for the first time when we present this manual to a public outside our project, so it's an important moment for us. Please share with us your feedback, your opinion, your suggestions, how we can improve the manual. The manual, the presentation of today, as I said, is just to introduce you the e-manual and to generate some discussions on the following questions. What is the general impression on the e-manual? Is there something missing in the manual? How can it be improved? We're going to take these questions and we're going to discuss about them in small groups. Okay? In general, the aim of the training e-manual is to train competent authorities and probation staff in implementing 947 and 829. As I said already, it's based on the literature review and also on the training needs assessment that we conducted using the European survey. And again, I have to emphasize that this is a collective work. It was produced by the partners in the PONT project, partners coming from different countries. We have Liga from Latvia, we have Rhiannon, and Simona from Germany, and we have colleagues from Spain, and we have colleagues from CEP. So it was a collective initiative. The content of the e-manual, as you can see, is divided into introduction and context, framework decision and mutual recognition, trying to explain a little bit the relationship between framework decision and mutual recognition, the description of the framework decisions. Then we moved on to the practical procedure because we saw it in the training needs assessment that a lot of competent authorities will like to know more a little bit about the procedure, how the whole procedure starts, goes, and then ends. And then in the next two chapters, we present the alternatives to pretrial detention in the countries involved in the project, and also the alternatives to detention and probation in the same countries. Again, trying to respond to the needs of better knowing each other's systems. In the last chapter, we present the main obstacles and difficulties and how we can deal with them, finding the competent authority in the executing state, filling up the certificate, how to do the adaptation, sentence adaptation, what are the difficulties in relation to medical treatment. At the end, we have a checklist for the certificate, hoping that competent authorities will be able to look through the checklist before sending the certificate, just as a matter of quality assurance. We are still thinking about other ideas, how we can improve this. We are thinking about a glossary. Maybe we can include also a glossary of what do we mean by lawful and ordinary residence? What do we mean by social rehabilitation? Maybe this kind of glossary can be also useful, but we will see how we're going to proceed about that. In the introduction and the context, we try to explain again why the framework decisions are useful, to what kind of social needs or judicial needs they tried to respond, and of course the main reason behind these framework decisions is the huge number or huge proportions of foreign prisoners in the European prisons. Then we try to explain how the DigiJustice projects tried to help the implementation of these framework decisions, and we mention steps 2, resettlement, and so on. And of course we present briefly the PONT project, which aims at training 60 competent authorities and probation officers from 12 jurisdictions. But what we also want beyond the training is to create a network that will stay even after the lifetime of the project. We want to train in each jurisdiction, at least in these 12 jurisdictions, to train 2, 3, 4 people that will be able to answer all the questions that they come from the other, let's say, competent authorities from these countries. Let's see if this will work out as we aim. But we are quite optimistic about that so far. About the mutual recognition, of course, we try to explain that this is, although it sounds maybe quite modern and very new, it's not necessarily new. It started in the commercial field in 1979. And then we explain how the mutual recognition is actually linked to the judicial cooperation, police and judicial cooperation. And then we move on explaining what the relationship between mutual recognition and framework decisions, and later on with the directives under the Lisbon Treaty. I will not go into many details about these concepts, but you have the manual already. We send it to you by email, so you can read it, and if you think that it's something that needs to be further developed, please let us know. The framework decision description, we try to make it a little bit interactive. We tried to have questions and answers, and this is how we thought it's easier to read, and we did that for for both framework decisions. The comparative overview probably we're going to attach as an annex to the manual, but it was already introduced by Esther. As you can see, a lot of similarities and also some disparities. And then the next chapter deals with the practical procedures, because a lot of competent authorities said that they would like to know more about the procedure, how they should start, how they should find a competent authority in the executing state, how they should do the sentence adaptation, and so on. And this is how we selected the topics, and we presented the procedure for each of the two framework decisions. The initiation procedure, how the procedure starts, the procedure of forwarding, the competent authorities, the consultation, time limits, consequences for issuing state, decisions of the executing state, and information exchange. Of course, when we presented this procedure, we tried to provide as many practical examples or reflection points. So people try to put this kind of information into concrete contexts that will help them connect the theory with the practice. And then we move on to presenting, as I mentioned already, the alternative measures in the pretrial stage. Of course, we focused mainly on the pretrial alternatives that are eligible under 829. So we presented the situation in Germany, Latvia, Romania, Spain. We did the same for the alternative sanctions and probation decisions in the same countries. And it's not only that we presented what are the options, but we also tried to incorporate some of the procedures that are relevant in each of these countries. Who are making the decisions? How long does it take? When they should be renewed, and so on, because they are all relevant for the competent authority in the issuing state when making a decision to forward or not a certificate to another executing state. We are still having difficulties with some translations. We still need to discuss about how to translate better some of the legal terms, but I think we will get there at the end. Then what I think is really important is the chapter dedicated to obstacles and difficulties, because we try to focus on the main four ones: finding the competent authority in the executing state, filling up the certificate, adaptation, and dealing with medical and therapeutical treatment. These issues were mentioned everywhere in the literature review and also in the training gap analysis. Everybody was like, we need to know how to deal with these issues. And then if you look at in the left-hand side, you will see how we explain how to find the competent authority in the executing state using the European Judicial Network website. We explain step by step. You need to click here, this window will pop up. You need to click here, and then you can move on, and so on. I think it's a very practical with print screens and everything, so they will be able to, follow the whole procedure in a way that, makes sense for anybody, we think. Filling up the certificate, again, we focus on the sections of the certificate where they need to pay more attention, or where they reported already in the training gap analysis that there are difficulties. For instance, when the when the double criminality is to be checked, to be controlled, Then, of course, there are issues around how many details you need to provide in order for the executing state competent authority to be able to categorize, to define exactly the type and the nature of the offense within the domestic legislation. So we emphasized exactly the issues that were reported as difficult by the competent authorities. Again, we focused on trial in absentia. Also, it's also a big issue in a lot of countries because, as you know, the certificate was updated in 2002, the form, and now, in case of trial in absentia, there are at least 5 situations that need to be checked. How the judiciary actually tried to inform, to summon the person to come to attend the trial and to provide enough proof, enough evidence that actually the procedure was really rigorous and in line with the European standards. And I know that here there are a lot of issues. For instance, in Romania, we might expect a lot of problems because of this summoning procedure. For instance, we consider that it's enough to place on the court main door the summon. For a lot of other European countries, this is not enough. And this is, we need to do more than that in order to convince that the person really was summoned. So we try to focus on the real judiciary issues and we try to suggest some solutions using examples, comments, practice tips, reflection points, and case examples. You can see here, for instance, a case example from VA, Romanian citizen who committed a car accident in Spain while being under the influence of alcohol. He wants to return to Romania to attend a trial from there. One of the measures imposed by the Spanish judges is withdrawal of driving license, but as Romania has not such a option in the legislation, the competent authority had to adapt that under the judicial control with an extra obligation not to drive a vehicle during the preventive measure. So we try to explain how this kind of approximation was possible. Although we don't have the same kind of, let's say, measure, we can adapt it in line with the nature and the spirit of the measure imposed in the issuing state. It was just a concrete example of adaptation. Dealing with the medical or treatment, therapeutical treatment is another big issue because, as Tony already mentioned, there are a lot of borderline cases with, between restriction and detention. And when do we have to apply 909? When do we have to apply 947? We try to discuss this kind of options in great detail. I think we dedicated about 3 or 4 pages only to this issue. As I mentioned, we started to develop this quality checklist for the certificate in order to help the competent authorities to look through the certificate before sending it, forwarding it to the executing state, hoping that it will not add to the bureaucracy but will help the quality, because in a lot of cases actually the executing states complain that the certificates were not fulfilled in the right way. And that's why we think that this is a very important topic we need to focus on. So this is our manual. You will find it very soon on our website, probationobservatory.eu. We are very much looking forward to see what you think, how we can improve it, if there are things that we need to change or to fix. But I'm sure we're going to take this opportunity to during the group work.